introduce yourself and tell us about your dog life journey.
Well, my name is Butch Cappel, and as far as my dog life journey, I'm fond of telling people my first job was scooping poop behind about 15 or 20 coon hounds when I was 7 or 8 years old, and today I'm still scooping poop behind 15 or 20 other kinds of dogs, so that's kind of my journey.
Right.
Some things never change.
Right.
So that's it. I've just done a little bit of everything with dogs, and they've sort of been my passion, so been very fortunate, been very lucky, got a chance to go around the world with Canine Pro Sports and introduce security training to people in a way that's not not sport oriented, and that's what I do today.
And have you trained dogs for law enforcement and all that?
So law enforcement, militaries, drug cartels, a little bit of everything.
Right. And can you talk a little bit about your unique program that interested me the most when I found out about you?
That would be my singing career. Oh, the Western Shepherd. Oh, I thought you wanted a song. Okay. Yeah, the Western. I tell you what, yes. I'll bend your ear for hours on that. So here's how it all started. About 12, 13 years ago, a gentleman named Brian Arrington, who used to run the Virginia State Police Canine departments. We were talking. Brian brings a lot of dogs over and sells to departments on the East Coast, and he was lamenting the fact that although he's predominantly bringing over Malinois now, the demand for dogs, for working type dogs with the terrorism and everything, is so great that even the mouths are starting to show up dysplastic. Mm-hmm. And so I popped off, which I've been known to do, and said, I can breed a German Shepherd because I like the calmness of the German Shepherd versus the energy and nervousness of the Mal. The Mals, they're both great breeds, and they've got their own distinct little things about them, but that's the reason I like the German Shepherd. They're just a little calmer, and they think more instead of being as reactive. So I get a lot of people in the North Texas, Dallas, Fort Worth area that they spend big, huge bucks on what they call executive protection dogs. Mm-hmm. And these are generally imports, and they're generally in the $20,000 to $50,000 range. And I assume they all have excellent hips, which was the biggest concern that Brian had. And these people will want these dogs' maintenance. They buy them, and after a couple of years, they realize, we ought to practice some of this bite stuff because he may not know how to do it. So they'll bring them to me, and I'll tune up their dogs for them. And I thought I could access these dogs. Anyway, to shorten this tale, thinking I had access to some really great dogs, I started looking, x-raying the dogs myself, and I couldn't find a dog that I'd breed to. Wow. So I'd already invested quite a bit of time in it, and I just had a hunch, and I started researching. My second favorite Shepherd breed is the Dutch Shepherd, and I had heard somewhere that there was no recorded incident. I'm not saying it hasn't happened, but just no recorded incident of Dutch Shepherds being dysplastic. Mm-hmm. So I tooled that around in my head a little bit, and I crossed a Dutchie and a German Shepherd. Dutchies can be a little soft, and I got some dogs that were just when they grew up, they were soft. They didn't quite have the oomph, the fire that I was looking for. Right. So I thought, what the heck? I crossed some of those pups back to a Malinois. Make a long story short, I crossed everything. Then I started getting some structural problems as I went back to more of the popular German Shepherd and Mal dogs. So I introduced a little bit of American Pit Bull Terrier, which the Pit Bull and the Greyhound are being only two bred strictly for performance type breeds, even today, are the soundest two, structurally soundest dogs on the planet. Right. And I bred those pups back to a Dutch Mal. You see what I mean? It gets complicated. Yeah. Bred them back to a Dutch Mal female, which is what most people think of as Dutchies anymore. And then I bred a pup of that back to a real good Czech German Shepherd that I happen to own. I got lucky and got. And hence Black Bart and his sister Maggie May were born.
Wow.
And there were 6 in the litter. There were 4 sables and these 2 black pups. And to be honest with you, my wife was going to shoot me because we were having these puppies every now and then. And we were having trouble finding homes for some of them. I mean, they're all mixes, you know.
Right.
And so I'd actually just give up on the idea. You know, I ain't trying it no more. We're just quitting. And then we had these 2 little black puppies. And for some reason, I just decided to keep them. And about 8 or 9 months of age, I'm looking out here at this monster we now call Black Bart, and he's gone everywhere with me. He is just showing me a lot of ability and a lot of intelligence. His sister is amazing. And I decided, what the heck, I'll just wait and let him grow up, and then we'll see what we got. And if that works, and it did, here we go. So that's how the Western Shepherd got started.
Wow. That's great.
It's confusing.
No, I think I followed you.
Good. I didn't. When I was a kid down in South Louisiana, I got on my mother's nerves a lot, so I wasn't allowed in the house much till supper time. And I'd go out around the neighborhood, and several of the kids, they just, well, I was ugly, you know, and they laugh a lot, and it hurt my feelings. So I started hanging out with one of my neighbor's dogs, and I've yet, in all these years, I've yet to have one of those dogs laugh at me. So I decided I'd better hang out with him than most of the humans I know, and that's not really true because I like humans just as much as I like dogs. But right. I can't. I mean, I don't really have I don't have an honest answer for that because I have no idea. I just know that I've always since I was a little bitty kid, I just always had a dog around. I don't know.
Right. As you were growing up, who became some of your mentors and helped you develop what you've got going today?
Well, Ren 1010 would have been the first one.
Right.
You know, honestly, I mean, there was a TV show back in my day when I was a kid, television show, and they had the Adventures of Ren 1010, and I was just amazed that this dog could be so happy and friendly, and then, you know, he could whoop a grizzly bear just at the drop of a hat. So that honestly sort of got my interest started, and then as far as mentors, I guess I was lucky. I started off, you know, wanting to train horses up in the Texas Panhandle, and I had a nice little collie shepherd mixed breed dog who went with me. She went with me everywhere, and I'd pull up somebody's house and say, "Hey, I can train you a horse," and they'd look at me and say, "Oh yeah," and then they'd watch my dog and they'd say, "Well, I'll tell you what, instead of training my horse, I'll tell you what, I'll pay you to train my dog if you can make it like yours." Mm-hmm. So I sort of got pushed into the corner of training dogs, and that led to a stint working in the dog food industry, and then in the dog pet industry in general, and that gave me an opportunity to, especially with the dog food, because, you know, at that time, Schutzen was just getting imported and big in the country. Well, it'd been around for about 8 or 10 years, I guess. And, of course, all the Germans, the current Germans at that time were the guys we looked to. And then as I got to do more and more of it and meet more of these people, I got to meet folks like Doug Deacon, who I think is probably one of the most intuitive, greatest dog trainers at the time. He had all the records for North American Schutzen, but he also trained police dogs. I think he's an active duty police officer, actually. Mm-hmm. Trained at a Schutzen 3, scored the highest obedience score ever at the North American Nationals. I think it was a 99.5 in his obedience score. And the only reason it was a 0.5 is because one of the judges, I don't know, looked at something, his dog had a long toenail or something, and dinged him a half point just because he didn't want nobody to be perfect, especially if they weren't German. So So Mr. Deacon was definitely a major influence and educator to me. I'm trying to think. Gary Patterson wrote some really great books. Again, another good top Schutzen competitor. So the Schutzen people through the 70s and 80s, they pretty much owned the. If you're doing protection training, you were going to have to go with one of the protection people, and they were the experts, and they were good at it. Godfrey Dildai was another from Germany who just was really showed me a lot of things about dogs. And the thing about these guys that were really good, Deacon looked at a dog. He didn't train a dog to do Schutzen. He trained the dog to do what he wanted it to do. And I think that's from working the streets with a canine unit. He has to. Life doesn't come in a pattern. Right. So he learned to train dogs that listen to him, so he could make decisions at the moment to solve a problem or maybe save a life, I guess. Right. And that's what I've been always grateful to him for was kind of showing me the difference. So. Anyway, those are two of the main people that have influenced, or three of the main people that have influenced the way I do today and what I do today. Right. Yeah, I mean it's really rather basic. Mm-hmm. First and foremost, I was looking for a healthy dog, and I want something that had a long life, long healthy life without being crippled. That was the whole purpose in the beginning. Mm-hmm. As I worked with it more and more and started seeing variances in the types of breeds, the nervousness of the male versus the reactivity of the male versus the thinking of the German Shepherd, the more handler sensitivity of the Dutch Shepherd versus the aloofness of the German Shepherd, the total commitment of a pit bull versus, again, because of reactivity, the possible negative reactivity of a nervous male. All these things factored in. I really started developing. All I was looking for was structure. But as Bart and his sister Maggie grew up, I started looking at Bart. To me, and let me be real clear, I could be wrong on this. Anyone who wants to meet me and tell me I'm wrong on this, I'll be sure happy to listen to you and kick you in the kneecap when you're done, because you're foolish. I've been in dogs, long time, and I've done a lot of things with dogs. Like Bart and his sister Maggie, Bart is like the secretariat of the dog world. Mm-hmm. He's a freak. He's a freak. At 18 months of age, when I cemented the fact that I'm going to recreate this dog, was a real simple act. At 18 months of age, weighing 94 pounds, we clocked him in a 30-yard sprint. At 40, well, the little radio-controlled car he was chasing was doing 41 miles an hour when he caught it.
Wow.
Yeah, so he had to be going faster than the car. Wow. Now let me put that in let me detail this a little bit for you. The average speed on the track for a greyhound is the biggest weight class. The most dogs in the greyhound racing world, the biggest class is a 70-pound weight class. Right. The average speed of that weight class that they run, they average about 40 miles an hour. Wow. So, and that's in quarter, half mile, 200-yard sprints such as that. So here I had this 94-pound dog, 24 pounds heavier than a greyhound, in 30 yards accelerated to the same speed that 70-pound dog could. Wow. And I just, you cannot not, if you like dogs, you cannot not try to recreate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's, that was when it came about. And then as he grew, I started seeing the other things, the other benefits. First off, I had a guard dog business, right? That was my main thing. I had guard dogs for 20 years. Mm-hmm. And, we put guard dogs in car lots that they had to protect by themselves. They didn't have the benefit of a squad of cops behind them to come up and grab the bad guy after they bit him. They had to survive the night if someone broke in and wanted to hurt them. So I don't like little dogs. Mm-hmm. To me, a 65-pound Mal is always potentially going to get hurt, right, and potentially lose a fight. 85, 90-pound Shepherd is a much better chance of completely stopping a man. Right. Right now in maturity, Bart weighs, and he's about 4 to 6 pounds overweight, but he's right at 112 right now. And you can, anyone who comes out, welcome. If you can pinch a quarter inch of fat on him, I'll pay you for him, because he's a lean, hard dog at that weight. And at that weight, there's literally not a man around who can stand up to him. Right. So I wanted a larger dog. I didn't like the smaller Mals. I mean, I grew up with bulldogs and Catahoulas, so obviously, Mr. Johnson was one of my early heroes, with the American Bulldog, and Scott and all them people. So, I like a big, powerful dog. Bart gave me that. Now, the other thing that seems to be now taking off is the no shedding business.
Right.
All right. Well, that's kind of a story in itself, because I never dreamed of a German Shepherd without shedding.
Right.
And Bart was 2 years old. And I'm telling we had his hips x-rayed. I had him graded and rated in Denmark, because I trust those people much more than I do anybody in America. Right. And the hips are excellent. We supply a picture of the radiograph to anybody who gets a pup. We have radiographs of the parents, the mother, their hips. I mean, we are serious, or I am serious about this standard. This has to be as close to perfect as a dog can get. Well, that's all I was worried about. And some lady comes out and she says, I want to see your Western Shepherds. And I said, well, sure. And Bart, I didn't have anybody around at the time except Bart, and he comes out and she's going, wow, ooh, and ah. And she's petting him, but Bart is a very affectionate dog, loves especially kids. Mm-hmm. And he'll just, he likes to be petted. So this lady's petting him, and she looks up at me and she goes, wow, he's not shedding. And I looked back at her and I said, no, he's not. And she stared at me for a second and she said, he's not shedding. And, I've been around him for 2 years now. I had never seen him shed. I didn't think nothing of it. And then it went, holy cow.
You're right.
He ain't shedding. And I'm digging through. I'm like, hell, he ain't got no undercoat.
Wow.
So, genetically, I have to assume that the Dutch and the Pit breeding into it, the lack of undercoat became dominant, and now we don't have an undercoat. So it took me 2 years to come up with that sales pitch, and that lady pointed out to me, but that's what Bart is. He's a no to low shed shepherd.
Wow.
That weighs 110 pounds and can probably outsprint most 60-pound dogs.
Right. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So where do you see the future with this breed? What direction are you hoping for?
Well, I just want to supply people with good, healthy dogs. I mean, as far as the direction, if it takes off with the general public, great, but that's a long. I didn't realize when I started doing this how difficult Max von Stephan has had it when he was trying to perfect the Alsatian, or what we call the German Shepherd today. I mean, it's difficult spreading your gene pool, right, and keeping all your characteristics. So, down the road, I'd like to see this be a more well-known dog. I'd like people to have the opportunity to own a really quality dog. They trained the one consistent thing that we get from everybody. I mean, Bart just makes he's just like a cookie cutter, man. He just throws himself no matter where we breed. And then I've got an excellent French-Danish import shepherd named Taza, and she's my mother line on the other side, who's just tremendous. So, we have the ability to diversify. How much, how fast, I don't know.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But we'll wait and see. For now, I'm just looking for people for now, my goal is for people who really enjoy dogs to have access to one that can be really enjoyed.
Right.
That's it. Simple as that.
And you foresee them doing really well in competitions and all that, so that.
Oh yeah, I don't see how any dog can. I don't see how they can be beat if there was someone who knows what they're doing.
Right.
That's the biggest thing is getting an intelligent handler.
Right.
Somebody leads as smart as a caveman. If you don't know what that means, go to my YouTube channel and you'll see the video. You have to be as smart as a caveman to train a dog. So it's good.
Awesome. Yeah. So let's talk about your program, and what you developed, sport wise and training wise and all that.
Okay, you talking about Canine Pro Sports?
Yeah.
Okay, well that's a good story all by itself. First off, the first Pro Sports trial was actually started in Mexico, Juarez, Mexico. I was training for a lot of people over there, as I jokingly say every now and then, maybe some drug cartel people, I don't know, but
right.
One of the folks who had lots and lots and lots of money had imported a Schutzhund Rottie, and he wanted him retrained for security protection work. And we'd done that, and this guy had access to, like I said, all the bucks in the world. And he loved being the center of attention. And when we trained, there was a big international park there at the border of El Paso and Juarez. And we'd go there and train. We'd always draw a crowd. And Bill said, he called me in one day, and he had a little short guy with a little high voice, and he says, Butch, many people, make me show. Oh, what the? What do you mean make me show? So he said, come up with a format to train for protection dogs, not Schutzhund, not French Ring. Those were the only two bite sports going in this country or Mexico at that time. And so I started working. I started calling various people I'd worked with, trainers, a lot of the people in the guard dog industry. That's what I was doing at the time, and I was calling all the old time guard dog owners and getting their opinions about what a dog should, how to exhibit, what they should exhibit, what they should show. And we did a show in Mexico. We had Bell had us on television advertising, and we were the big thing, and everything else. We had about, I don't know, I think it's 2,000, 3,000 people in the stands watching. It was a big deal. We had more teams from America, people I knew. Bell put up several $1,000s in prize money. There was no entry fee. I think he picked up I don't know if he picked up the motel bill, but I know he paid everybody's meal, took everybody out to eat, had a big party. Like I said, paid out several $1,000s in prize money. And word of the trial, I guess, as the winners came back across to the U.S., they started talking about it, and there was something called Dog Sport Magazine. It was the internet of its day, and Mike McCowan called me and asked me to tell how it went, and next thing I know, I'm getting calls from Florida and California and Missouri and all over the country, people wanting to continue doing what we're doing. So we worked out a certification system, because there's no place that you can go. There's no consistent anything in America for dogs, period. Right. And even less for a security or a protection dog. So I worked with friends of mine with some of the police associations, and we came up with guidelines and minimum standards and written score sheets. We changed a lot of things. The first thing we changed, had a background in rodeo, so from our very first show, I didn't want one judge. I've never understood one judge in the dog world. It opens the door for a lot of politics and brother-in-law stuff. Right. So, the first thing we did was we required 2 judges. Gives everybody a much fairer picture of the dog and what he's doing. it also limits greatly the ability of someone to kind of buddy up with a judge and get away with something, because if that other judge on the other side of the field sees something, 20 points different than the first judge, there are going to be people, wondering. So we implemented a 2-judge system, and then we grew and we kept growing. We just went doing trials in New York, and next thing I knew, we were getting inquiries from Tony McCallum, Katrina Hartwell, folks like that in Australia, and we were going down there. And then Karsten Skiles called me from Denmark, and we were going over there. And then I had a girl named Maki Taki, believe it or not, that's her real name. She's Japanese. She wanted to know more about it, and she came here and learned. And so we were just going in a blowing and going all over the place. And then I got out of the guard dog business for a lot of reasons and came here, and things kind of got touchy. I couldn't run this business. I started a new business and run pro sports, so I just kind of let it shut down and die about 2010. But people keep calling me and bugging me, and especially the people in Denmark. They are always bugging me. We'll work a lot with the military over there. Jesper Anderson, one of the top canine handlers and bomb dog detection trainers. He runs the European branch of pro sports, and so the cotton picking thing won't die. It just keeps coming back up. So here I am again. So now I got other people I can send to other countries, and I get to stay home and work with Bart, our Western Shepherds. So, and of course we have a training facility here, so we train. That's the bread and butter is training dogs for the public, and especially the protection and security dogs. So. That's what pro sports is, and again, since there are no certifications anywhere else, I mean, we're the only internationally recognized certification system there is for protection dogs. One other little thing I didn't think about, but pro sports is the only. In America, when we want to see the top dog trainers, we go do a German sport or a French sport or Swedish sport or one of those. And pro sports, I think, is the only I know was the first and still the only American created dog certification system that's ever been adapted by Europeans. Right. So we must have done something right.
Yeah, absolutely.
So anyway, you get me on my favorite subjects. I can't shut up.
Well, that's great. You got me pumped up. So I love it.
Right now, well, you could say it's a combination of dry kibble and raw, but it's not really raw. My wife won't let me feed nothing raw. Mm-hmm. She says, her standard's real simple. If she wouldn't eat it, live in it, or sleep in it, the dogs can't. Right. So, I started when I had the guard dog business. Of course, to cut down on money. I mean on costs. We're looking any given day. I had anywhere from 35 to maybe as high at times as 50 dogs, the smallest of which would weigh about 75, 80 pounds. So, I had a considerable feed bill. So I came up with this deal. I could get eggs at a wholesale price, and I would buy rice, and I would get a really high-quality kibble. I remember I was in the dog food industry. I worked for the Iams company, Mr. Iams, or sold Iams, represented Iams and Eukanuba. I studied nutrition, and I believe in nutrition. So I believe in a high-quality kibble. I know how cheap they could make this stuff. Mm-hmm. So at that time, I was feeding Diamond Premium Adult, which is a really good food for the dollar. But along with that, every night I would cook up, and we still do this today. We cook up about 10 to 20 pounds of chicken leg quarters. We boil them till the meat falls off the bone. Mm-hmm. We take the water that we boiled them in and the meat, we run that through a blender, and we pour that over the kibble. So I'm getting a really good protein that really is not much more than expensive than just buying a quality dog food. Right. I like the Victor brand of dog food. I use it for Bart, Diamond. There's a lot of good foods out there now. So the problem with the all raw diet is real simple. I had a good friend with an American Bulldog, a champion Bulldog named Spartacus Bubicus. Garrett Brill's a great dog, and Garrett's real good. I mean, Bubba gets every meal is handmade, right?
Right.
So he was starting to have, and he's meticulous. Garrett does everything to the max. He's studying. He's an engineer. He studied this dog food. He read Ian Billingsley's books. He did all the homework, everything it took. And Bubba, he'd retired him from the show ring, but he was getting older, but he was starting to have some tremors. And Garrett called and asked me. So we go to my favorite old vet. I only deal with gray-haired old vets. And Dr. Mack said, "You feeding raw?" First words out of his mouth. And Garrett said, "Yeah." He said, "How many times a week are you giving him heart or liver?" And Garrett said, "Well, about every other day I give him either heart meat or liver meat." And Dr. Mack says, "There's your problem."
Wow.
Now, we all think of, especially liver, as being super healthy, right?
Right.
Iron, B12, all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But what happens is, if I remember correctly, there's something that too much liver or heart meat, muscle, will jack with the triglycerides in your system, in a dog's system.
Mm-hmm.
And it causes misfires of the nervous system, which can lead to tremors, which can actually go into, like, get more and more like cramps and more serious.
Mm-hmm.
And it was simply because he was feeding a little too much heart and liver.
Right.
So, to me, it's this highly meticulous, very, very accomplished individual can screw up a raw recipe that simply. It's the only screw up he made in 6 years. I trust AFCO. I trust the standards. But I also know better than to trust the dog food companies, because they lie like son bitches.
Right.
On that label, and they got all sorts of ways to trick it. And that's one of the things we might do one of these days, how to read a dog food label for our YouTube channel.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think by mixing a quality kibble with the regular meat, that we have very healthy dogs. I'll give you here's a secret tip, one of my favorites. You want a little way to keep your dog's teeth perfectly healthy and clean all his life?
Right.
Okay, I hope you got a big audience here.
Okay.
So here's what you do. You're going to go get a rack of beef ribs. It has to be beef, cannot be pork.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to take one of those, depending on the size of your dog, either once a week or once a month, at least, once their teeth are clean. If you got a dog with a lot of tartar on his teeth right now,
mm-hmm.
go get the rib bone, throw him a rib bone 2 a week for 2 weeks. His teeth will, or 3 weeks, and his teeth will be totally white again. You'll lose all the tartar.
Wow.
Then you can maintain with the rib bone. Bart gets one once a month, probably.
Okay.
What happens is we don't eat beef rib bones because they're tough, right?
Right.
We can cook the pork ribs because the beef rib bones have all this sinewy tendons going all through the meat.
Uh-huh.
I mean, they got to hold up a 1,000-pound animal, so it's tough, that meat between the ribs. Well, those sinews, those tendons that run all through that meat between those rib bones are nature's dental floss.
Okay.
If you feed it raw, if you cook it, you tenderize it. If you tenderize it, you have 2 problems. A, the tendons and meat get soft so they don't clean. B, the bone gets hard and brittle so it can splinter.
Right.
So, throw them a raw rib bone. They'll chew and chew and chew. They literally, the tendons and that meat on the side of the bone are enough to totally break up all the tartar and remove it from your dog's teeth. Then, since the rib bone is a non-weight bearing bone, in other words, the big thigh bones you see in the pet stores that are basted,
right.
They're holding up maybe a 2,000-pound bull. Well, them things are dense and hard. Hell, they can crack a tooth. A rib bone is not carrying weight, so it's not as dense, which means once the dog's chewed the meat off, they can chew on the bone to get to the marrow inside,
uh-huh.
and that softer bone will actually keep shaping and sharpening the teeth to keep their shape healthy.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm going to try that.
Try it. Let me know how it goes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's great info.
Yeah.
Yeah. see, that's why I like to ask that question, because you get some really good answers, and I'll tell you what, I'm convinced just by listening to so many people and asking that questions that the raw diet is so unscientific, really. You know what I mean? Because each dog is going to react differently. And
great point. Yes.
So tell me about your kennel setup. What does that look like, and how hardy are your dogs with? Because I used to live in Texas as well, and I know that humidity and stuff. How do they handle the heat?
Yeah, well, we got a 40-run kennel. We have 20 runs down each side, indoor, outdoor, 10-foot runs on the outside. This kennel is old. It was built in the 80s. It was closed for 20 years when I came and reopened it because it's the only thing I could afford. And so we're constantly rebuilding, remodeling, but it's a practical kennel. It's not made like today's pet motels with the potpourri in the corner and the Animal Planet on the TV and all that nonsense. This is a dog kennel. They got a 14-foot run. They can run up and down. They can bark at their neighbor. They can bark at people that drive up. And then we have 2 training yards, agility yard, and then where we do most of our bite work. We're out in the country, so we get on a country road. We get to go walk them down. They get to go past cows and goats and everything else. It's a good setup for dogs. It's not for people. I'll never forget when I first pulled. I wasn't real familiar with folks in the city, being living all my life in Abbeville, Louisiana, or Amarillo, Texas. I just a lady pulled up out here about boarding her little dog, and I'll never forget. I started walking out from behind her. She stepped out of her car and she's staring at the kennel, and I'm looking at her back, and I hear, as I approach, I hear her go, "Oh my God, it's a kennel!" And she just stares, and then she jumps back in her Cadillac and throws it in reverse, boy, flies out of there, "Oh my God, it is a kennel." So, it's not definitely not for a lot of, that's what I would consider the cosmopolitan folks, but it's, works real good for dogs.
Right. Absolutely. So what kind of breeds, besides the shepherd breeds, do you like to work with?
My favorite breeds are 4-footed with fur breeds.
Right.
Yeah, I don't care what it is. I got a little mixed breed terrier. I got a Basenji in the house, and I got an Anatolian in the house, and right now my biggest entertainment is the French Bulldog that my daughter's got. So heck, dogs are just great. They're just like people. They all have a personality. They all have different things you like. The only difference between them and people is dogs don't have the mean, conniving, jealous bones in their body, so that makes them pretty fun to be around.
Yeah, no doubt.
So I like them all. Although I do refuse to do obedience with a basset hound. I'm sorry, I've owned a basset hound. I have attempted to train several basset hounds. I do not accept basset hounds as customers. Thank you very much.
Are they just that stubborn or dumb or both?
No, I don't think there's any dogs that are dumb. I think they got different ideas, and they've been bred to do different things. And basset hounds, all hounds, but Basset's worse than most because they're closer to the ground, right?
Right.
And they've been bred to have this humongous nose and this curiosity, and they're never more than 3 inches off the ground anyway. So, you're trying to teach them something. Man, they're smelling, hey, wow, this skunk went by here 4 days ago. I better go follow him up and see if he got home okay. That's why I don't do basset hounds. They got other things to do, by golly. They're busy.
Right. How's been your experiences with the breed that I have the most experience with, the English Bulldogs? How are they to train?
Oh, I've had an English. That was my first dog my daughter got of her own dog when she was 16, and she's 30 now. We've had dozens of English Bulldogs. The first one, Sexy Sadie, we called her. She was bite trained. I actually used her to train some of the decoys that would come over. I have a radically different way of doing decoy work than what you see most of the people do. And one of the big things, if you're training dogs for the street, is you learn to for a lot of reasons, not just one, but for several reasons, you learn to catch all the dogs when they're doing a bite work in a profile. You don't want to stand frontal and face the dog, because the first most obvious reason, maybe not the most obvious, but the first reason is if you're a male and you're standing facing a dog, you've got certain parts, that you don't want the dog to partake of.
Exactly.
So, the thing about an English Bulldog is, even Sadie was very athletic for an English, and a pretty big girl, but they still, they're limited. There's two things they can't do. They can't swim, because they sink like a rock, and they can't jump more than, 27 inches off the ground.
Right.
So one of the main things I use Sadie for was I get some of these guys, especially some of the guys from Mexico that come over and want to be, if I can't be a bullfighter, I want to be a decoy. So they stand right there facing right in front of the dog, kind of squatting down, their legs wide open, and hell, I just send Sadie, and she'd run straight towards them. They'd hold that arm out in front of them like sport dog people do, and she'd jump, and of course she couldn't reach the sleeve, but she could get crotch high. No, not one of those people ever stood full frontal again after they caught her one time. Best instructor, I like English Bulldogs. I like Bulldogs. Bulldogs are great. They're one of those working breeds that, if you go back to Mr. Johnson's American Bulldogs, they still have it, so they're great dogs. Yeah. Love them.
Yeah, I do too. I just my hope is that there are some people that take on some programs to not necessarily to radically change the English Bulldog look, but to make them healthier with a little bit more fire. That's
right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's and I think that's what Mr. Johnson did. He just, but he did get way further. I mean, let's face it, the English Bulldog is now considered a couch potato, not a working dog. So,
my boy that I have now, I keep him right at 50 pounds.
Ah, good.
And he can jump from the backside of the couch over that. So he's pretty athletic for a Bulldog. I mean, he's no Malinois or anything like that. I'm not saying, but he's pretty athletic and he's got a little bit of fire in him. So I definitely foresee me getting another Bulldog that a variation to be able to do some work with. So
yeah, and there's no Bulldogs born without fire.
Yeah.
Period.
Right.
They all have that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate your time. I don't want to waste too much more of your time, and I hope to maybe be able to talk to you again in the near future, and just anybody that has more questions, I can maybe answer them for people, ask them for. And it's been really great talking to you, and I enjoy your videos, and I definitely believe in the Western Shepherd. I mean, the first time I saw it was a light bulb went in my head. It's like, yes, that's exactly the kind of Shepherd that I would own. So.
Well, I appreciate that. And it's never a waste of time when you're talking about Western, so it was not a waste. It was quite enjoyable for me, too. I appreciate your time.
Yeah. Thank you, Butch, and I'll talk to you again, hopefully, in the near future.
Yeah, please, stay in touch, man. Talk to you later.
All right, bye-bye.